Hello everyone. Now you see that I have mentioned that we are going to set up common disks for ASM. For this there will be downtime. We are going to shut down our machines, add disks via VMware, make sure that those disks are persistent. We need to make sure that we create a separate location for those disks. We are going to mount it, install the binaries and all those things. So let's start. So first thing what I will do is uh, let me shut down the machines. So not with this, I'll close this. On the second one I'm already on root, so what I will do, shut down -h now, so it will halt, it will shut down immediately. I'll do the same thing from here because my other session 150 machine, you guys saw that it's hanging a lot. So I'll just go to root and shut down -h now, and this machine is also down, and you see everything is going down. As soon as this is down, I will show you the next step. This is down and that one is also down, so we need to make change on one, copy everything on the second, and we will eventually see the reflection on our settings. So I'll show you what I'm trying to say. Go and edit virtual machine, add hard disk, create a new virtual disk. Now this is the important area. I said that okay, this will be 50 GB, that is what I said. This will be for data, right? So you need to make sure they check this box and check this one. You need to allocate the disk and make sure to store the virtual disk in one file. You don't need to split it, otherwise there will be a problem. Okay, I'll name this data, sorry, ext. I'll name this ext. I will create these disks on specific location. Let me check if I have that location created. Okay, why these are there? Okay, leave this. What I will do, there is other location I have. I don't have much space in here, so just a second guys. Okay, so I won't create this on C drive. I have space, lot of space on my D drive. Can't say a lot, but enough space. So I'll create ext disk which will take 50 GB immediately. It's not like it will start filling up and it will take the amount of space whatever is needed. It will immediately allocate all the space, so you will see the reflection on your hard disk where 50 GB has been taken. So bear in mind that you have a lot of space available already. So 50, 50 and 10, that is 110 gigs already, plus the amount of hard disk space assigned to the virtual machines. So I'll save this, let it finish. I'll pause it, I'll come back. Okay, so you see that 50 GB has been pre-allocated. I will do one more 50 GB and then 110 GB and then I'll come back. So you guys can see that 3 GB has been pre-allocated. Click OK. So now close this. You need to 100% close this, otherwise it will show lock on the folder. So I'll show you what I'm trying to say. That is a problem. Then it won't make any changes. The lock will actually the lock will actually mean is that the session is still active. You don't want session to be active while making the VMX changes or VMX file changes. So you need to make sure that close this session even though the machines are not up, but still you need to close this session. Let me go to the rack one and I will show you. This is the log file. You don't want to see this. As soon as you close that session, that will go away. See, it's gone. Same thing will happen with that one. So I'll close this. These two machines are currently not needed and we are going to modify the VMX file anyways, and the VMX file is kind of a heartbeat of these virtual machines. All the parameters and all the settings are there in this VMX file. I'm going to open this with Notepad++. Okay, we'll go scroll down to the bottom. Now we come to the disks area. You see these disks 1, 2 and 3. Now I told you, let me go to my documentation. My documentation says that I have to change VMX file on both nodes. So this is for every disk. So what I have to do is, you need to make sure you copy it properly. So just take everything, Control C, that's what I'm hitting, just under true, paste it and modify these ones. To tools. So this will become kind of 6 parameters for this particular disk, which is data disk. Same thing you need to do under true is this. We don't need to change anything because this is 1 already, so everything is 1. Now go to the bottom and paste this again, but change in here so that it reflects the 3 on all of them. What this is trying to say is we are trying to make this disk persistent. If you want these disks to be readable from 2 nodes and writable from 2 nodes, this cannot be a same type of disk what you currently use. You need to make sure this is kind of a raw type of disk, or you can basically call this a raw disk because currently it's not partitioned. So you need to do a proper setting so that VMware actually sees this as a common hard disk, just like NAS, a network attached storage. So just it will feel like NAS storage. So that's what you need to set it up, and these are the parameters what you need to set up in the VMX file. Just go down and make sure that any specific node is not locking these disks, because when you eventually start this virtual machine, every virtual machine will try to lock these disks for themselves, but you don't want that. Otherwise what will happen when you start the other machine, there will be a conflict and there will be a lot of issues. For that as well, there is a parameter. I'll show you what the parameter is. I am going to paste it, so it will allow no locking. So you see disk locking is false, so you need to paste it at the bottom of the VMX file. Sorry about that. Okay, so you come here, you paste it. Now take everything until the data disk, copy it, save this file, close this file, open the other virtual machine VMX file, just go to the bottom and just paste it, because we have not attached the disk to this node 2. But when I paste these parameter, now that second node will also start seeing these disks, and we will feel like, or actually it will seem like a NAS common storage. And that is what you need, because ASM is actually a common disk, a centralized database where the different node or multi-node or the cluster nodes are going to write or read from it. So that's what ASM is. That's what we are setting up. So now save it. I'm going to go more in details on what is happening in the architecture way. I'll give you the general idea as well while setting up everything. So there are chances while opening this VMX file, VMware will keep throwing the error, but eventually it will come up. So let me check if it takes it. Okay, it is taking it. Sometimes what happens that when you try to open these VMX files, it takes some time to set up. So now you see it's not pre-allocated now, it's persistent. It's readable or writable from both disks. So perfect. Everything seems fine now. Okay, so you have done this part. So now what is the next step? Now we have to partition these raw devices. We cannot do anything with these raw devices. We need to make sure that we use the fdisk tool to partition this, but make sure that you do not set up the file system, because we do not want a file system layer in middle of ASM. ASM is itself a volume manager, so it's going to handle all these disks. As soon as you partition it and you give these disks to the ASM library, it will automatically mount those disks and make sure that it's taking care of these disks, including the startup of instances and everything. So you don't need to set up the file system on the disk. So let me go one by one and set up the disk. And one more thing, because this disk is common to both nodes, these disks are common to both nodes, so you have to partition only on one node, and as soon as you partition on one node, you will see that that will be reflected on another node as well. I'm going to show you what I'm doing so that it will be easier for all of you. Sorry about that. I think I haven't started the machine. It's going to throw me error 100%. So I'm going to start the machines. I'm going to start the other machine as well. Sorry about that. I have to restart this machine. The error you guys are seeing, it doesn't matter. No issues with that. The problem is with the version 6.5 binaries of Oracle Linux. When you update it with your yum update all, it will take this binary to from 6.5 version to 6.7 version, and then you don't have to actually worry about anything or the compatibility issue, because it's all fine. Now you see the Oracle ID is popping up on both ends. Now I'm going to connect the machines. Node 1 I'm using the putty because there is somehow the problem with my other client. I'll try to use this. Okay, so now it is not showing a problem. It's not hanging. Okay, so everything is fine. I actually don't need a putty session. I'll close this. Close this. Okay, so now I have to do fdisk to list the disks. fdisk-l, fdisk-l. Now you see that you have 3 disks, right? 50 GB, 50 GB, and 10 GB. SDB, SDC, and SDD. Now let's start partitioning fdisk. This is the partition, dev SDB. This is a new partition. It's a primary partition. This is partition number 1. Enter. You don't need to do anything, and then write it means save it. Do the SDC, new partition, primary partition, partition number 1. Enter, and write it. SDD, new partition, primary partition, partition number 1. Enter, and write it. So now if you do fdisk-l, you see that everything is allocated. It has partitioned it actually. It will show it like that with the number. So what will happen is, if you want to do multiple partition in this specific disk, you can do that primary and secondary partition, but this is what I have done. I have taken the complete space. This is the first partition. I have allocated a complete space, so because I don't need multiple partition into one specific disk. Now, because Oracle ASM has already been installed, what we need to do is we need to check. Okay, sorry about that. We need to stop the NTP, that is network time protocol daemon. We have to stop it, otherwise the problem is the time synchronization issues. There are chances where the time zone has not been set up properly on both nodes, and now what will happen is sometimes the both nodes are not in sync, so one node will think that the other node is down somehow, and it will, and the clusterware will actually evict that node. Eviction is actually restarting the node. You don't want the nodes to be restarting every time, so better is to shut down or stop the NTPD service so that we are in sync. So actually the both nodes are in sync, and the clusterware won't think that the node needs to be evicted. I will talk about voting disk. Voting disk actually does this job of pinging, not actually pinging, nodes actually vote into the voting disk, and that's how they show that they are available. Let's discuss that later. Let me check the service NTPD status on both nodes. So you have to stop it. Okay, and I wanted to show you, right, fdisk. So now you see the reflection, right? 1, 2 and 3. So it has been stopped. Let's move the file as well, so that when we restart, somehow when the virtual machine kind of restart, okay, and what happens that when you go to sleep and then come back the next day, you want to practice the lab, you have to eventually shut down the machine and then you restart it, and what will happen is that NTPD will restart. So you don't want to do it, you just disable all the way, but you don't delete the file, you just move the file, so that in future if you want to retain it, you can actually roll back it. Let me show you how it's done. You just copy and paste all these files. There are 2 files, you just move it to different names. Sorry. And you have to stop it. Okay, this step has been done. Now let's start creating the disk. So for that, what we will do is, we don't need to actually worry about both the nodes. I will configure on one, and then we will eventually list it on the second node, and you will see the magic, and it will actually pick up all the disks whatever we have created. So the Oracle ASM binaries are sitting in USR, or sitting or installed in USR as bin. Oracle ASM, you have to say configure -I. So it's asking for who is the owner of the driver interface. You will say Oracle. Who is the group which owns? So you say install. You will say yes, you want to start Oracle on boot, ASM disk on boot. Yes, that's done. Now you have to initialize the disk, so you will say init. Okay, so this is the problem. So sometimes what happens, because of the operating system binary, I would rather suggest you guys to install Oracle Linux 6.7 and above for this, but that's okay, it's resolvable. We will restart the machine, reboot the machine. Let me reboot the machine one by one. Let me check. Okay, now I have rebooted the machine. Now let's do it. Okay, so now it's not throwing the error. So what we will do is we'll go to the next step. What we will do, we'll create the disks /user/sbin and copy it, paste it, create disk is data. Okay, for sorry, I have to check the disk, otherwise I'll mess it up. Disk -l BCD, and the D is the smaller one. Okay, F disk create disk ext /diff/sdb1. Okay, let's change it to data sdc1. Okay, and /recovery area fra. By the way, ext is for voting disk and OCR. Now what we will do, Oracle ASM scan disks and list disks. So it's not it's now showing up. What we will do, we will initialize the disk here as well. So what we will do is Oracle ASM list scan disks. Okay, so I have to initialize it /user /sbin bin /Oracle ASM init. Okay, now it's done, and we will see the magic. List disks. Good. So now we can see the disks on both nodes. So we'll stop here. In the next session, we will start setting up the DNS server, and that DNS server, we will make sure that the two nodes will be pointing to that specific DNS server, so that eventually when we will use the command dig or ns lookup from both nodes after installation of clusterware, that particular rack scan will be resolved to 3 IP addresses. That's what the plan is. It has been a long video, but it was required for you guys to understand what is required to set up the ASM disks and how to mount it. Now our disks are ready for installation of clusterware, but before that we need to make sure the DNS is set up. We will set up the DNS in the later video. Thank you very much.